So first, what IT investments should we make in order to align with strategy? Well, to individually select the right systems may actually be the wrong answer. Why? Because as it turns out, it may be the proper way to do is to really look at a portfolio of IT investments that will deliver different types of values, that will deliver different types of results, and together, all together, they will make up the right set of IT investments so that we can maximize the execution of the strategy. So first, we recognize that each IT investment or each information systems that we put in place probably delivers different set of values. So for instance, some of the systems provide growth of the company. Some of the systems provide the enhancement to our current operations. Some of them are more maintenance oriented, for instance, to keep up with the evolution of the payments and so on. And some of them just purely mandatory, because of the regulatory requirements, we just have to have the system. So if we put the systems in different categories, so we can see that they're transactional systems that basically help us cut costs on business operations. The information system that help us control and manage the information and data for our management decisions. The strategic systems that help us gain competitive advantage, and also their infrastructure system that don't have that they those are the systems that don't have specific values to themselves, but they're the foundations for adding important applications on top. And a right IT investment portfolio should be composed of a mixture of all these, because each type of systems deliver a specific set of values. And in order to manage business well, in order to execute the right strategies, then we have to have the right mixture of these systems. So this is a framework developed by Peter Weil and the company from Harvard and MIT to really understand how to formulate the proper IT investment portfolios to meet or execute the company's strategy. So infrastructure systems are those at the bottom because they provide foundations to all of different applications. And of course, all the transactional systems have to take advantage of the infrastructures, but they're there to cut costs and increase the efficiency or effectiveness. And then on top, there are the informational systems that provides that allows the control and integration and quality improvement, and strategic systems that help company expand and grow and compete. So depending on the company situation, each type, so the portfolio may be different, but each company has to understand that there's probably some kind of proper or the best mixture of these investments. So before we think about the individual investments, before we think about the individual systems, we have to understand, we have to have some kind of allocation of budget based on this distribution of the four different types of systems. So, for instance, they found that the average firm spends about 25% on transactional systems, 46% on investment systems, 18% on informational systems, and 11% on strategic systems. Then you can see that from between the firms have a cost focus versus agility or more of a growth focus. The composition of these four systems are different. So it's not a guideline. So the percentage, the breakdown of the investment is not a guideline. This is only a framework for companies to think about, because it's really important to understand that when you have a set budget, you should not just start with the individual project. You should really have this. You should really think about what is the best portfolio that you want to have, and then you identify the different components of the portfolio, and then you focus on the individual project to fit into the portfolio. So this is a very good framework to understand, to plan out the IT investment to support the strategy. So another framework to help managers, to guide managers to select the right IT portfolio is to understand how IT can be used in a business. So this is the framework that's developed by McFarland in at Harvard to understand this is called the IT strategy grid. and to understand how strategic IT is to a company. So this is another application of the 2x2 matrix, and the two dimensions are impact of IT development and impact of IT operations. So how important is the development of IT, or the most up-to-date, cutting-edge information technology? How important is that to you as a company? But how important is the operational IT? So making sure that all the systems are running constantly, running reliably. How important is that? So depending on the importance of the two dimensions, then we have the four quadrants. So the first quadrant here is when you depend on IT and operations very much, but not necessarily in the cutting edge of IT. So that's called a factory. So IT is like a factory to you. And so that makes a lot of sense, because if the factory is something that has to run constantly, has to run reliably, has to run regularly all the time, to churn out products. And if technology is like that, so if you depend on technology to run your company, then technology is like a factory to you. On the other end of the spectrum, if you don't really need technology to run the company operations, but you really want to take advantage of the newest technology, so that you can actually develop the next product or develop next service and to compete, then it's called a turnaround situation. So that's on the other end of the spectrum. But there's a mixture. So if you need really high level of IT operation, and also really cutting edge the technology, then IT is strategic to you. So you just have to make sure that technology is always there, and you have to invest a lot in technology. But on the other hand, if technology is really not that important for your development, it's not that important to your operations, then it just plays a supporting role. So one way to start to really think about the IT investment is to identify the company in one of those four quadrants, and then there's a theme of IT investment or IT strategy that will emerge from this realization. So what does this strategic grid tell us about IT strategy and investment themes? Well, it depends on which quadrant you're in. Then there's a focus in terms of IT investment or IT strategy. So for instance, if you're in the factory quadrant, then your IT investment should focus on effective and reliable operations, meaning that the main part of the investment should go into the area where you can improve operations. So there should still be a healthy mixture of infrastructure, transactional systems, informational system, and strategic systems. But overall theme has to be more on operations than on strategic expansion or product or development and so on. So the mixture will be very, very different from, let's say, a turnaround team where the innovation and development will be the theme. It's also pretty interesting to look at the support quadrant. Um, there's a tendency for people to use advanced technologies, especially since there's in the first class we talked about the concept of now every firm is a technology firm. So companies tend to say that, Walmart is just a technology company that happened be in a retail business, or so on and so forth. So there's a lot of that kind of phrases that people use, but we should also recognize that in some cases technologies just play a supporting role. So when technologies are a support to you, then you should pay attention to cost control. You should make sure that you don't spend that much. You buy the right amount of technology. You buy the right technologies to use. But spending a whole lot of technologies, spend a whole lot on technologies is just not necessary. It's not only wasteful, but may actually create the higher level of dependencies that you don't need. So this framework at least help us understand the theme of technology investment and IT strategy so that we can move on to managing the overall not only to make the right investment but also to manage all the different all the different systems correctly. So now that we've decided on the systems to buy, once we've decided on the overall the portfolio of IT investments, then the next question is how do we manage them to deliver values? Well, there's some principles of managing them together, and then we're going to go down to the managing of each system. So that part, the latter part, the managing each system, will be the topic of next lecture. So when we discuss um, subjects such as systems acquisition and development. Um, to the next few slides, we're going to talk about some of the overall IT systems management principles. So there are actually a lot of different areas that we should be looking at, and these are probably not handled by business managers, but it's interesting to know what are the things that at least from a technical perspective that the information system have to deliver. So for instance, the availability of the system, there's accessibility of the system, reliability of the system, scalability. So two people can use that, or we can run 10 transactions, but can we run 10,000 transactions, for instance? And there's flexibility of the system. So there are many different areas that you have to take into account when you develop a system. Of course, that many of that aspects actually directly translate into the amount of money that you put in. So that involves the technology, the number of servers, the robustness of the system, and also the number of people that you hire to run the system. So there are so it's not just to decide on which system to buy, but it's also on a sliding scale how much you want to put into that system in order to achieve the different levels of the planning. For instance, listed on this slide. Another key aspect of information system planning is business continuity. So business continuity deals with the adversity of information systems. Now that we depend on systems so much, on information technology so much, what happens when it goes down? So when reservation system goes down, the the whole airlines is grounded because even though we can still fly the plane, but we can't really send any passengers anywhere. So you have to take those things into consideration. When you depend on technology so much, then you have to find a way to deal with the events when system goes down. So they are the parts that we have to make sure that we can recover the data. So we have to have backup and the recovery procedures. We have to be able to recover the system and also to make sure the business keeps running. So that's a disaster recovery plan. So we have to have all those things planned out, but it's not just there as in a folder. It's not just there implemented in the system, but it also we have to train all the people to be able to deal with it, to be able to execute the business continuity plan when something bad happens, and we have to audit the capabilities all the time. So the implementation can get very extensive, and many companies don't do it because it can get very expensive. But we have to weigh the importance of this and also the cost of this, to determine how much we want to put in terms of the business continuity. So one way to balance this out is to look at the loss that's going to incur due to the downtime versus the investment that we're willing to make for business continuity. And then we can find the optimal point between the amount of loss that we're willing to accept and then the amount of cost that we're willing to make to avoid the loss. So once we come up with an optimized level of spending on business continuity, then we can think about how much we're going to put into training, how much we're going to put into rehearsing, auditing, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we've completed the first part of management. That is, we started to look at the corporate governance. that leads to the IT governance principles. And then we in this lecture we focus on the IT value delivery part, and then we use the overall corporate planning to come up with strategy that drives the IT strategy, so that we know the what will be the optimal the best IT investment portfolio, and then how do we plan out the IT systems based on certain principles. So next, we're ready to talk about on the individuals, for the individual systems. How do we manage that? So how do we how do we acquire it? How do we develop it? How do we source it? And then that will complete the managing the IT management side of it. So that will complete the value delivery side of IT management. Then towards the end, we'll look at how do we mitigate the IT related risks.